Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Can't Make This Sugar, Honey, Ice and Tea podcast. I don't know with the rules if you can explicitly say a naughty word at the beginning of the podcast, because I don't know if I can tick the box if it says explicit material is mentioned, being swearing. So trying to make this ever so slightly family friendly, if you will. But anyway, if you're looking for the podcast, because it's just recently been rebranded, there is actually quite a few podcasts I didn't know, but now I know, that have called themselves Can't Make This Sugar, Honey, Ice and Tea up. And the only difference that I will say with mine is that when you spell sugar, honey, ice and tea, it's SH exclamation mark and T. So in case if anyone's struggling to find it, or it's not as readily available as you'd like it and you're struggling to click the links. But of course, there's access to this podcast on multiple platforms such as YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I think that's it. There's a couple more, but those are sort of the main primary platforms that people access this podcast on. And sort of in light or piggybacking off or continuing the last podcast, I said that, looking forward to celebrating and bringing in a lot of really good, useful information around gut health and how to support your gut and nice hacks, etc., which is coming. But actually, I take one step back and sort of want to just focus attention around which was last week on the 4th of February, focusing attention on, which people may or may not know, but 4th of February is celebrated globally as World Cancer Day. So, cancer to me, and I would say diabetes, is just kind of one of those things that you either have had it, or someone that's had it, or you have someone in the friendship group that's had it. And it's kind of these two really cruel diseases that are popping up, and it's just left, right, and center. And it's kind of like you know of someone who's like developed this condition, and it's just quite unsettling and sad. And so I was asked within my colonic association to write an article around this theme, and that sort of made me sort of think, okay, let me get my juices flowing around, some tips and some help and hacks. And what is really important, in a sense, linking it to gut health and just general overall well-being, is that if you start to get your health in check in terms of, and I'm going to use the frame and words of pillars, there's fundamental pillars, that one needs to sort of have as a checklist ticked off, that's going to support your health. And if you have more pillars, the stronger the pillars are, the more likely your health won't have an outcome that will be a condition or an illness, disease, etc. Right? So the stronger your pillars, the more likely something won't develop. Of course, unfortunately, we have the predisposition, and some of us have to be a lot more on top of the game than others. And of course, those, I'm going to call them unicorns. Those unicorns that, they eat, they drink, they do everything bad, they don't exercise, they drink no water, and, they like the rhino species that just seem to hold strong until their last day, and they die at like 100 and something, right? So you get those unicorns, and I'm just going with they have really, really, really blessed karma, done some really good deeds in the past life. But typically speaking, to master or optimize health and well-being, as a human, you kind of need to be sort of on top of your well-being. And, the pillars are, if I just speak to the top of my head, number one, which I always iterate on, is being good with your hydration levels, making sure you sleep properly and you sleep well, and the conditions of the environment support deep, restful sleep. We're thinking about exercise, we're thinking about healthy diet, we're thinking about sun exposure, we're thinking about social interaction and getting some, form of exposure there, happiness points, what are you doing, what are your hobbies, making sure that you're doing something with purpose, you have something that you believe in, so some form of faith, I do think that does serve. So, especially if people are very religious, you don't have to be specifically religious to believe in something, but just some sort of greater thing out there that gives you some, almost like an invisible string to sort of keep you going as you progress in your years. And that's sort of just off the top of my head. There's a couple more, but those are the ones I can think of, and that I can speak very fluidly about, which is great. But yeah, so these are the sort of things that you need to ensure your health and well-being. So when I was writing about this, people may or may not know these things, and I do experience that daily in the clinic, where people go and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that, or I didn't know that, or this, why is this information not publicly available? Why do people not know more about this? Why do the NHS not share this? Why do the doctors not tell this? And I can't tell you why, because I don't know. I'm not in that, individual office. But, that's what I'm trying to achieve here with these podcasts, is just trying to get a little bit of information out there. And the primary goal is to make sure that it's healthy, that it's natural, that it's sustainable, and that we can create these daily habits, because I'm a huge, huge, huge believer in the power of the success of your health and well-being comes from creating these small daily habits that are consistent. And that is the gold. And like I say, the things are not necessarily difficult. Things are simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. And I think the hardest thing is just creating the habit, creating the consistency, and just having the motivation to keep it going, right? So that's why you need, as we are a species, our species are very social impact. That's what I always have framed. I remember from an interview I did many, many years ago around talking about men's mental health. And, it was during COVID actually, and talking about the sort of the suicide rates. And, it's not really well spoken about with men, and how high the rates are, especially in the UK. And that's where I came up with the concept during this interview, is about how our superpower as a species actually is our social connection. And, there's a very big sadness around how since anything, and really probably technology and globalization and all these social platforms, that we've ironically been closer than ever, and maybe I can rephrase and say closer than ever virtually, but we have lost the connection quite literally, physically, kinesthetically. And that is our biggest superpower. So if we're not sort of honing in on that superpower, what does that say for us? And of course, that's one of our fundamental pillars that we need. So social interaction and connection is really, really important. And that will be in multiple dynamics, whether it's friend, family, sibling, work, romance, etc. So, really, really that is a superpower, because when you surround yourself by good people that can bring happiness into your life, you can bring happiness into their lives, you can develop, you can grow, that energy can really be powerfully harnessed to support you, your mental well-being, which equals your health, right? Your health and wellness. And I think that is one very undervalued thing that I recognize, and even including myself over my own journey. And then it's just sort of coming back to that sense is, this is our superpower. So we need to sort of get back on that and not prioritize work and over, going out or seeing your friends or spending time with your family or your loved one, etc. So sort of, take some of my own advice if you can, because I was just actually joking in my head yesterday when I was thinking about recording this podcast, is, people sort of loop back and feedback and say, how do you know about these things? How do you think about these things? And I think it's really just coming back to the premise that all that I'm sharing with you is just through my life lessons and experiences. And it comes down to my beautiful math teacher in my final year of A-levels, where she just said, the biggest life lesson I can give to you is not actually teaching you math. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And she said, the biggest life lesson I can teach you is try learn through other people's mistakes. Try speak to people who are older, who have gone through things, because if you can learn from their mistakes, you're going to advance yourself a lot more in life without having to suffer. And, that principle has, I call it the washing machine in the brain. That has sort of been going there in the background, in the data banks of the memory and the mind. And, that is so true, because I seek guidance from elders. I talk to people. I understand their life stories. I take their wisdom, and that, has helped, and that I've used those principles to instill into my life. And then, of course, as I always say with that, what's that movie? I think with Ben Affleck, about paying it forward, the reverse engineering movie I watched when I was a kid. But it's just the premise of, I think, being a good person is when you learn something, it's sort of your right. So when someone teaches you something, it's a privilege. And when you're bestowed this privilege, then it's almost like your duty and your right. And I would almost put or frame as an obligation that you should pass that knowledge on to others, because there will be someone else that was once you in that position where you needed help and guidance. And now that you have that knowledge, it's sort of an honor and a privilege to share that, because it is valuable advice and knowledge. And that sort of also has come through from South Africa. There's a famous word called Ubuntu. And when I think I was like, 12, 13, maybe, I don't know, 11, 12, something, a young person in primary school. And I was taught the expression that means a person is a person through other persons. And I think, as kids were like, what the hell does that mean? It's very cryptic. And it's just kind of saying that, you are someone in somebody else. So, try create someone else who is around you, or your surrounding people, your community. Try and empower and uplift everyone as you would like to have that done unto you, because you are only as great as your weakest link, sort of in a tribe as well, if we sort of go back to that analogy. So, people these days are all like, oh, I have my secrets, I have my strengths, I have all of this, I'm going to keep it as an ace up my sleeve, so I have the upper hand, the ego coming out. And it's actually, no, let's share, let's be a community, let's help each other, let's build each other up, right? We are a community-based species, so let's hone on that, right? And sort of just looping it back to the start of this podcast is just coming back to, this is a fundamental pillar that people seem to forget or not realize. And that, I think, is a huge emphasis, especially for, talking about Cancer Day, because, miracles do happen. And, when someone has that will, because their community around them, that will to fight this disease, to fight this condition, miracles happen just by the sheer mindset, the powerful mental shift. And they just say, I am going to fight this. And equally on the opposite side of the spectrum, if someone goes, I give up, this is taking over me, I can't fight this, they mentally give up, and most likely often they don't have the right support groups around them, they don't have loved ones around them that can build them up and try and motivate them to survive this, then that diagnosis, can be, I don't know, let's just use an example of a year, but they can go within the week or within the month. So it's really important to sort of emphasize that. So the reason why I want to talk about this subject today is because one of my friends mentioned to me, she's like, you really need to get back into doing your podcast and get on top of this. You share great things. And she says, and it's also great to share more of your story. And I thought to myself, what is my story? Do I have a story? I don't know about my story. And I got asked to write this article for my colonic association about cancer and World Cancer Day and how to help, and just sort of the premise of the article, or the name of the article, is called Empowering Wellness, How Lifestyle Changes Can Help You Prevent Cancer. And then not even a day later, I got asked for an article for a magazine to sort of write a story if you have been affected by someone who in your family has suffered from cancer. And I thought to myself, actually, just, the day before my friend saying that to me, I thought that's quite interesting, the timing of events as the universe decides. But I don't talk about this often, and I only do talk about it if it comes up organically in the clinic, or if it's a story I share, because of course I work with people with cancer. And most people don't know this, so I thought it's good to sort of just help broaden my understanding of why I'm very motivated in this work, or at least another pillar to explain why I'm motivated by this work, is that actually my mum passed away from cancer. And it was a very, 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 very tragic story. sad story for me personally, because I didn't have a great relationship with my mum growing up. My mum really struggled. She had a very difficult life for many reasons, and every sort of door that could be shut in her face, in every aspect of a life. You know, if you're talking about romance, you're talking about career, you're talking about personal, you're talking about family, you're talking about relationships, siblings, children, etc. My mum suffered greatly, and I always say this, and I'll say this hands down, I don't think I will ever meet someone in my life that will have suffered as much as my mum suffered. She, you know, it's quite a very difficult life to live, and I have huge respect for her for surviving in the way that she has, or she did. And I'm not talking about when the cancer arose, it's just her whole life. Just a really, really, really strong warrior. That only, you know, as an adult, I go, wow, like, I don't know if I could have gone through what she's gone through and how she's managed and handled it. The resilience she had, like, you know, great, great respect to her. And, you know, I consciously believe that I've chosen to sort of, as I'll say in my spiritual terminology, I incarnated into her family line to sort of start clearing that ancestral history that's going on, because there's a lot of stuff that I've had to work through from different things that I've worked on from shamanic terms, and still things to carry on, but a lot of patterns being cleared. But bless her, like, she really, really did suffer. And this article that I was asked is to sort of explain my experience. And, you know, some of the questions were like, you know, what kind of cancer did she have? How long was her fight? You know, what was the hardest part in terms of me navigating her while she was sick? If I felt comfortable, you know, did it impact me financially? I'm just going through the article here with some of the questions. You know, did I feel supported by the healthcare professionals? You know, was I aware of the kind of help that was available? Were you your mother's carer? Did you get professional help? And what kind of advice would you give to people who are at the early stages of the journey, or even equally further along? And of course, one of the big things that, you know, really put more fire up my bum, really, or get me going, was that, you know, how, you know, it just really kept my motivation on, you know, making sure my career changed. Because everyone I meet goes, wow, that's a big change from going to from being a chartered accountant into, you know, this, like, wow, like, you know, what made you decide that, you know? And it's just divine, you know, my purpose, really. I just want to help people. But of course, your situations and your upbringing do unconsciously motivate your decision making. And so this was one of the factors, is about my mum suffering. And then I think the last question here I see is just, you know, would I provide any additional insights? So I just want to talk about just a very interesting time, because if, you know, I told you about in the last podcast, like, I had this blocked trauma arise, you know, after 17 years of my father passing, that came up. And then not even a few weeks later, it was like, okay, let's start talking about your mum's passing. And I thought, gosh, you know, is this the year of healing or what? And there has been, again, another sense of enlightenment of like, wow, or awareness, that I was like, oh, I didn't really tie that in. But I forgot if I said this in the last podcast, but basically my father's passing, I'll just repeat it now just in case, because I don't know what I said, because, you know, I talk a lot. But basically, my father had an accident, and he was diagnosed with diabetes on type 2, so sort of towards the end of his life. So he, you know, enjoyed La Vida Loca with all the candy and sweets and sugar and biscuits and things, which is an interesting story, because my dad was overcompensating, because my father was quite old. He was born in 1936, so he had me quite late in his 50s, but he looked really good for his age. So you know, it's this running joke. It's this running joke that basically on the night before they were going to get married, my mother and father, my dad was like, I have a confession. And she goes, oh God. And of course, I think as a woman, you'll be like, what's happening? You seeing somebody else? You cheating on me? You know, you don't want to get married. What is it? And he said, no, it's not any of that. It's like, I actually need to tell you, I'm actually 10 years older than I told you. So apparently she did freak out. She was like, oh, I don't know if I want to get married. Of course, they ended up proceeding. But the idea was that with his age, he was in the war, you know, World War II, like legitimately World War II. And he had to go into hiding. I don't know the reasons why. My father didn't share very much about his history. But he, as a kid with his little brother, would go into hiding with his family during the war. And sort of one or two comments that have stuck with me is that he said that he never got to eat sweets until the age of 10. And I remember the other one where he said that he and his brother had to share a rabbit. I mean, that's what they eat in Europe. They had to share a rabbit over a 2-week period. And I mean, if you think about how, you know, wonderful, they're very cute little rabbits or bunnies. But I mean, just to think about how skeletally small and not a lot of fat, and especially during the war or meat that the animal would have, I just don't know how they survived. So I think coming from a traumatic upbringing where, you know, of starvation, of poverty, you know, not having sweets and things, it was very overcompensated for me and my brother as a kid. So my dad would, you know, every morning he'd have this like Queen Victoria style cup, like massive cup that's probably worth like 4 or 5 teas, Earl Grey, and always have biscuits and, you know, the delicacy. We would go out to restaurants very regularly, always having desserts, etc. So, you know, I think it was late 60s or so, you know, the diabetes eventually caught up to him. And one thing with diabetes that people don't know about is that your skin bruises very easily. It's very easy to hurt yourself. So if you get a wound, it doesn't heal very easily. And there was something where my father, we don't know how he had an accident, but he started to lose a bit of his mental capacity. You know, he would start to say things a bit delirious. So I don't know what was happening, because again, I was a kid and it was a bit like, I'm not sure what's going on. But very, very hard to sort of watch the, you know, again, the mental decline. And he hurt his left arm and he knocked his arm. And what happened is he then subsequently became unwell because I didn't notice him come out of his bedroom for quite some time. So I went into his bedroom and then he was in bed and he was reciting something quite like very weird and very foreign, like a prayer or something. But he had unfortunately defecated himself and peed himself in the bed. So I ran to my brother and I was like, something's wrong with Papa. I don't know what's wrong. Like, I think we need to do something, get some help, go to the hospital. I don't know. So of course my brother came up. He could drive. So we sat my father up, and we noticed this big wound on his hand. But what has happened is it was blistered. It was a huge bubble. You know, I don't know. I can describe maybe like 10 centimeters in length, but a huge bubble full of liquid or fluid. And so, you know, we didn't think much of it. And then he went to the hospital. And then I was in high school, so my final levels or A-levels or college, as you would call it locally here. And I, again, didn't have the opportunity to go see my father because I didn't drive, people weren't around. So it was a bit of a difficult time for me. And then ironically, there was a guy that, you know, it was kind of like a fling thing. We never ever went really on a date, but we hung out, and, you know, it was always a question of what if maybe something might evolve. And he contacted me out of the blue and he was like, hey, how are you doing? What's up? You know, do you want to go for a coffee? And I just said, I would love to. If, you know, can I ask a favor? You know, sorry to be cheeky, but would it be possible, because my father's in hospital, if I could just stop there just beforehand and go see him? And he said, absolutely, like, no problem at all. So he dropped me off there, and then I walked to where my father was in his hospital room. And what I didn't know at the time was it was not visiting hours, but I went in anyway because probably I just knew where to go. I didn't need to ask for help or anything. I didn't walk into his room, but I was sort of guided to say, stop here and watch what's going on. And there were 2 nurses looking at his arm. So I saw them take off the bandage that was around his arm, and then I actually saw that this, I'm going to call it like a big blister, it was really massive, but this big blister had popped, and there was a huge hole in my dad's arm now. And then I just saw them like talking to themselves, looking perplexed, like not really knowing what to do. And then the other one just handed over the bandage and was just like, I don't know, just wrap it up. And coming from a background that my father's a doctor, I've been raised in hospitals basically my whole life, I was like, well, that's really odd. Like, surely you need to clean it, like put something antiseptic on, or like cover it. You can't put a bandage on, but you need to sort of like cover the wound or put something, or a gauze, or, not just wrap it up and just say, be done with it. So I was like, that's really odd. And, fast forward, spiritually, my guides needed me to see that moment. I needed to understand that moment. And basically what happened from there is I got a call the next day saying that my dad had caught an infection in the hospital. And I thought, I know why, because he wasn't properly cared for. And basically an infection got into his wound, and then he got septicemia. And then when people get that, they don't have more than a day or so. And that, has led, unfortunately, to my father's passing. So that's basically why he did pass. Of course, there were other health issues to dictate that. But instead of, potentially going in for surgery and, helping to support his health, that was the reason he was gone. And I was, guided to be shown that moment so I could understand what went on. So I didn't realize that fast forward to, a few weeks ago, where I was talking around the subject of, and it's probably subconsciously hiding that the medical system, not NHS back there, but Western medicine failed looking after my father. Western medicine fundamentally didn't support proper care for my father. And so that might have been fueling me in the background, trying to understand as a kid. Like I was hobby all the time, self-development, self-care, self-learn, how to do this, how to improve that, Okay, so now we fast forward to my mum now. So my mum, if I can tell you, I don't really, it's a little bit too personal, a little bit too private, because it's not talking about my life, it's talking about her life. But the thing she's been through is really bad. Like, if I can emphasize that, I'll stay there with that. And, like I say, the resilience and the strength to continue to fight with the life she's led, very inspiring, very empowering as a story. And my mum would never complain about a thing. If she was struggling, she was doing this, she was strong enough to hold her ground. And so it was about 2 years. Yeah, 2 to 3 years, I would say. It was about 2 years. I forget, but its timeline's always difficult for me. But about 2 years before, my mom started to, I moved to the UK. I wanted to sort of, like I say, I didn't have a good relationship with her. And part of my healing, my self-journey process, I was like, I really want to start working on this relationship. I'm an adult now. I'm trying to heal myself, and a huge fundamentals, the maternal relationship that you have, that can bring a lot of healing to my life as well as hers. So I was trying to sort of every now and then create this relationship. And she was a carer at the time. She predominantly worked in Oxford, but she did decide to come visit me in London once, and she said, I just can't help it. I've got this shoulder pain. I've got this lots of pain. You're starting to learn these kind of things. Is there anything you can recommend? And my ex at the time was a holistic healer, and his primary work at the time was doing massage. So he was trying to teach me to help her. He was giving her massages and things like that. And it was very strange, because you're like, oh, I've never seen you like complain about being in pain. So clearly you must mean it, She's like, oh, a little bit of pain is probably like an 8 or a 9 for a normal person, right? Anyway, so I just like, oh, what are you doing for it? She's like, oh, I've kept going to the doctors. And, they just send me home and just say, take some painkillers. And basically, fast forward, 2 years later, my mum basically said that she was feeling unwell coughing a lot. And she said that she, moved into a new home where she was looking after somebody new and just felt the temperature wasn't great and it was very cold all the time. And she said that she wasn't sure, bless her soul, she was sitting on, the sofas and she felt like the sofa quality wasn't good because every time she was sitting on them, she just felt like her hips were hurting a lot. And again, now fast forward, these are sort of certain, comments that have stuck with me. And she basically said that, she was working and then she got up one day while she was looking after a client and she fainted. Then, of course, when you faint, you knock your head. So when you go to the hospital, the first thing they do is do a brain scan. So CT, MRI, etc. And what they then discovered were hundreds of nodules on her brain. And they were like, oh my God, what could this be? So they did a biopsy and they found out, okay, it's cancer. So they went and did further tests. And I can't quote you everything off by heart, but basically from memory, they were like, oh, you've got cancer in the lungs, you've got cancer in your kidneys, you've got cancer in your bones, you've got cancer, I can't remember, like those are the main ones, but basically it was just traumatic. And they said, we're basically going to stop doing tests because it's actually not part of our resources anymore. It's just you've got enough cancer to know you're going to die soon. That's just, the brevity of how they, unemotionally say it, unfortunately, because they get very desensitized. And it's kind of like, wow, so my mum had problems many years ago, but had been rejected, turned away multiple times, doctors not taking her seriously and just said, go home, take a painkiller. And I'll tell you, my mum was very frugal with money. She was very penny conscious, and that's okay. And what she did end up doing was going weekly for a physio session or acupuncture session, even 2 sessions a week because she was very unwell. And when my mom, would spend money, you wow, this must be really serious for her. And then long story short is they're like, well, you probably got 2-3 months to live. Your cancer is that advanced. It's metastasis cancer. It's spread all over your body, so you don't have a long time to live. And then and, just because, I want to share, the truthful story. I was in South America at the time. I just quit my job as a chartered accountant, thinking, okay, I'm going to start now moving into this health and well-being business, studied reflexology and thinking how am I going to make it work? And then I was doing a 6-week retreat at the shamanic jungle, the Amazonian rainforest. Doing really deep healing. And there was one night, whilst on the medicine, again, there's, I don't want there to be secrets out there, I work with psychic aspects, people are different, people can do different things. And I think in the work that I do is really helpful because it can give me an extra perspective on how to help with the well-being. And basically I had this out-of-body experience and I was floating and I saw this silhouette floating in the sky that was shaped like a body, but had black all around it. And almost the best way was scratchy black, like you see on a TV screen when the screen goes. And it almost, to describe it, was like a million flies or something, just all vibrating together. And it was very dark. And in terms of an energetic feel, very toxic, dark, negative, heavy, dense. And I was just like, oh God, where am I going? Who is this? What does this mean? And then my floating body went, and the best way I've described it previously is it was just this black candy floss. And then my body started to open up my arms and just taking this black candy floss and then bringing it into my body and sort of consuming it through my torso. And I just kept doing that. And doing that, I don't know how many times, I can't remember, on the medicine. And then I was told, your mom. And then I went back into my body. I woke up into, the 3D. And I just started purging. And then, hindsight, what I realized was my mom was sick. I didn't know. So I didn't know in real time. But basically, beautifully, what I was doing is I was clearing her illness for her on a shamanic level. Didn't even know I could do that at the time, I was just a nobody doing no practices. So it was just very powerful and influential. And I obviously the next day, because you're in the jungle, so there's very little to no signal. So the next day I sort of went and phoned my mum and I just said, is everything okay? I had this really weird dream about you. And then she just broke down and said, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm not okay. My second name, my name is Starlight Diana. My mum always called me Diana. And she just said, Diana, I'm not okay. I'm dying. And I just was like, what? Like, it's very shocking to the body. You just freeze, you go cold, you go confused, you just don't know what's going on. And you're like, what does that mean? And then she sort of just told me that, everything I've just sort of said to you. And she just said, I don't know how much longer I have, but I'm going into the hospice, but I didn't want to tell you because you're on your nice holiday. Obviously, if anyone's been to the jungle and on medicine, it's far from a holiday. It's like going to the depths of your soul and trying to clear things. It's really intensive and difficult. And I had multiple weeks left, and I went to the shaman and I said, this is the situations that has just happened. I think I have to leave the retreat early. And he said, please don't. I'm going to do rituals. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to strengthen you so that when you go back, you can go be with your mother. And then, this work will help, because he did a meditation on her that night. And he just said, I'm sorry to say, but, there's no saving her physically in this life, but we need to protect her soul and clear as much negative energy, negative karma, so we can make her passing easy and then help her for the next incarnation. And I thought, yes, sir. So I phoned her and I just said, you need to hang on. You need to, just please fight, and I'm going to be there. And of course, sir, I got there. Fortunately for me, I was not employed. So time is divine timing of the universe, because I can tell you with the previous job that I had, getting time off would have been virtually impossible. Because, there was different requests when I had time off, and they would say, can you untake your leave, please? And I'm like, no. They're like, okay, well, can you still do your work? They probably would have made me work in the hospital. So I went all the way up into Oxford. And at the time, because I was traveling, I didn't have, at the time I was traveling, I didn't have much with me. So I asked them if it's possible to stay in the hospital or the hospice. And they said, well, your mum's got a private room, which people don't normally get, but for some reason they gave her a private room. And they were like, there's a sofa there, you can stay on the sofa. So about 2 weeks I lived in this hospital, and all I can say is it's a very, very, very difficult time to, watch someone, there's sort of this difficulty of I've never really had a really good relationship with her, and I wanted to make things work, but time has run out now because my mom sort of lost mental capacity every 5 minutes. And then the second thing is I'm just trying to, step into this privileged position because, I'm trying to be a healer, actually recognizing that this is my life journey, my life purpose. And what an honor that, even though we didn't have a great relationship, what an honor to be there for my mother, who gave me life, who gave me the opportunity to live this life. So it was a huge empowering privilege as well. So it was quite conflicting and quite confusing, but majority of the time she didn't know who I was. She thought I was one of her friends that I'd never heard of, didn't know about. And, just sort of playing the game that, yes, I was this person, and just going along with it. And, when she had moments of, loss of consciousness or, saying weird things, she got really panicked because she saw, I went for making a cup of tea outside, and then, the nurse was like, come back. It's really, really bad. You need to come. And I was like, oh my God, she's died. And it just turned out that, she was shouting for me because she saw an advert on TV about don't let your bank account get, subject to fraud. And then she was like, oh, someone's emptied out our bank accounts, or, is everything, we need to sort this out. We can't lose our money. And then I was just like, don't worry. I just went with it because I thought that just helps ease the situation rather than going like, that's not true. Just sort of going like, no, it's okay. I called the bank. They caught the bad guys. They gave us all the money back. So absolutely fine, just de-stressed her immediately. And then the same story around, there was one, it was a bit scary, but it is what it is. She was like, who's that in the corner? And I was like, I don't know. It's just nobody in the corner. She goes, who's that crocodile lady in the corner with the hat on? And I thought, oh, I don't know. But, hindsight now, I've learned about reptilian people and reptilian species. So I thought, hey, maybe she's working with those kind of people. I don't know. It did turn out, I only found out in like the last year prior to her passing that my mum was a medium and could speak with the living dead. And, a lot of interesting insight and information come from that. So, then I was like, oh, okay, so this is where my sort of, capabilities have come from, being able to be in tune with people, the empathy, the psychic connection and understanding. So I thought that didn't just pop out of nowhere. So that was quite interesting, but also kind of like, hey, you could have told me that sooner. That would have been helpful. But anyway, so that's sort of been my story. And then, yes, to the point that my mum did pass and I was there on the day, and it was very traumatic actually. And I do feel like I need to emphasize this because I feel like a lot of people go through these kind of situations, and I just want to say, hey, like NHS people, carers, anything, please just try and maintain your empathy and sensitivity when you're in these situations, because it's a brand new traumatic experience for every family that have to go through it. But yeah, basically, the nurse came in on Friday evening, night shift, and was like, your mum's going to go tonight, so you need to be prepared. And I didn't say this before, but my brother did fly all the way from South Africa and stay for a little bit, but he couldn't stay, all permanently because of same for him, so work commitments, etc. Bless him. But yeah, so then, when you hear those words, your ears perk up like a dog hearing an intruder, and your mind goes into overdrive. So literally the whole day, the whole night, I just stood there holding her hand, staring at her. And I don't know how much cortisol / adrenaline I had in my body, but you can definitely say it burned through completely. And bless my mom, such a fighter. So basically, they said if she passed that evening, her doctor actually signed off and was away for the weekend and only would return on the Monday. And so if she passed on the weekend, I would have to stay, or at least I'd have to come back all the way from Oxford to London and come all the way back just to then get the death certificate. And then I was like, oh, that's not good. Don't want to wait 3 days. I don't know what kind of mess I'll be in. Where would I be? These are too many difficult decisions that I don't know. And then, bless my mum, she pulled through intentionally, I'm sure, just to make it easier on me. So she pulled through that when Monday came. That was the day she ended up passing. So then we got the certificate sign off from the doctor, and then I didn't have to do the long journey there and back. Bless her, very kind of her. But it's very traumatic, like I say, whenever I get asked this, to watch just a human decay and sort of just go into those stages of death, not being able to consume food, then not being able to drink, not being able to swallow, the complexion just changes, goes completely pale, grey or yellow, and then you start to see when, in the urination, the blood starts to show up, and just, not being able to move, and the weight loss is just so quick, her leg started to look as thin as your forearm. It's just really hard. And then they start to have that, I think it's called the death rattle, but then the whole, taking the last breath, it is very shocking. And you think it happens and then they passed on, but then, there's no movement. And then a minute later, then it happens again. And you're just like, oh my God, I just don't know what to do with this. And, so then in the last moments, I was told by my guide, please place your hand on her shoulder, because I was sitting on the left-hand side. So I took my right hand and placed it on her shoulder. And then she took her last breath, and then she moved on. And it's just very shocking. And then you just, you don't know what to do. You just stand there, you're in panic. You know, the nurses and, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, because you have to be hard to work in that job, but the empathy is not really there. And they're just like, should we leave you in the room alone for a bit? And you're kind of like, I don't know what is the right thing to do. They're like, okay, well, we'll step out and you just call us when you're ready. And I was like, okay. And then eventually they came in, and the sheets that, you know, the patient stays in, that is what they are wrapped up in as they're transported. So it almost gets wrapped up like a baby would, with the whole body, and then gets taken wherever the body needs to be taken, down to the morgue. And that sort of was my encounter. And then fast forward to, you know, this year, I was going like, actually, I say to people often that a lot of my work, you know, people coming to me is because the NHS have failed people or told them that it's not possible to heal, or that they can't do anything more, or actually that's it, or, you know, like there's no help, or actually you're going to have to live on this medication forever. So I sort of always make the joke that, you know, I'm sort of like the back end person that's dealing with the failures of the NHS. But I only sort of had this awareness this year that, you know, the Western medicine has failed both my parents. Both of my parents' lives were lost because of mistakes done. And, you know, I don't want to like totally say like I hate the NHS. I don't at all, because there is definitely a purpose and a place in Western medicine, and obviously, like I say, I'm going into Western medicine as well. So, you know, but it's just kind of like how shocking for me that two of my parents were lost because of mistakes or oversights, and you're kind of like, that's not cool. And, you know, if this has happened to me, you know, how many other people has this happened to? And, you know, do we speak up enough about this, you know? And also the big thing is, you know, how overworked the NHS staff are and underpaid, and like little holidays, and almost like bled for their souls in a sense. So it's kind of like, I think an overhaul needs to be had around this. So I was kind of like, I didn't actually realize on a subconscious level how motivating has it been. To what extent has this motivated me in my work? I mean, again, like I say, this is part of my purpose, so I've always been inclined towards this way, but I don't know how much extra motivation it's added to know that the Western system hasn't done justice to my family. You know, even if I think as an example now, my brother was in a motorbike accident when I was younger, and ironically, as divine timing is, I was on the same street with my friends driving to a party or something, and that was the same street that he had the accident on. So they phoned me and I answered, and they were like, can you get here? And I was like, I'm literally here. How freakish is that? And anyway, they put my brother in the ambulance, on the oh gosh, I can't think of them, like the rig. Is it the rig? I don't know the word. Anyway, they popped him up, tried to put him in the ambulance. You know, this guy has like his hand cut open, his leg cut open, you know, like really traumatic. And then they dropped him on the floor, and then we got into the ambulance, got him to the hospital. They take him out the ambulance, they dropped him on the floor again. And I was like, what is this? Like, my experiences are really bad. And again, I'm just thinking, like, it's just come up in my mind now, by the way. I don't like hold on to that, but I'm just thinking like, wow, like this is crazy. Like this stuff is like lingering in my brain. And anyway, I just know that there's ways to sort of go around that and help people with that. So that's sort of what I wanted to say. And most people have asked when I have spoken around the subject, you know, how old was my mum when she did pass? And, you know, a very young 59. So, you know, I think that's sort of almost the core years that you could have been doing more, you know, sort of more with your life, figuring out your things. So yeah, so sort of on the summary, you know, not really feeling supported by the healthcare professionals. It didn't impact me financially, which I can say because obviously my mom skipped a few steps of, you know, the process, if you will. So I can understand and respect that when people have to go through this themselves or with their families, it can be quite financially draining. So bless people that have to, you know, take on extra jobs, extra work to afford healthcare. Which is interesting because I since took on private healthcare because so basically, again, and I didn't think about this till now, but basically I had my nose broken in martial arts and I went to the hospital and they didn't do anything or see me for a good 6 hours. Then they said, okay, we're going to have to refer you to the ENT specialist and, you'll be seen within 3 days. And then you're going to have an MUA, which is manipulation under anesthetic. Oh, that's like a tongue twister. And from there, then everything will be corrected. Basically, I kept phoning them for 6 weeks, just saying what's happening, what's going on, And they're just like, we're sorry, we don't have your referral, we don't have your connection. You have to phone back. The person's not available. You got to speak to someone else. I can't tell you the stories that I got. And then my brain just said, as an auditor by my initial trade, was like, go back to where the process started. There is a breakdown in controls. So let's start where it began, right? So then I went to the A&E again and I just said, okay, you lost my referral. What the hell's happening here? Come on. My nose had set a little bit wonky donkey now. Anyway, then they were like, oh, we're really sorry, we're going to really expedite this. So I get called the next day and they were like, okay, this has been a big stuff up. How can we fix this? I said, well, you tell me. And they're like, well, can you come can you get seen within 3 days? And I was like, well, actually I'm writing an exam then. And they were like, well, if you don't take the appointment, then you're not going to get another one for months and months and months. And I was like, okay, so I've been I have this exam that I need to write that's only once a year, but now I have to put that on the back burner. Got off the phone, was kind of like, what do I choose? And then I was like, I need to pick my health first. So then I had to get my nose re-broken and struggle for that for another few months. Very unpleasant, by the way, just to let you know. Because of the failures of the NHS again. So it's really, really weird. Right, so anyway, I just realized I have a lot of stories, so I hope you're enjoying my storytelling. But yeah, so just sort of coming back, so, in the article was kind of like, what was the hardest part for you to navigate when she was sick? And I just think the hardest part was just knowing that all of this lost time that I really, really, really wanted to work on and try to harness and create a relationship and sort of create the forgiveness and the space part of my healing journey, her healing journey as well. Is not going to be there. And like I said earlier, it was just sort of really hard, to watch her decline, and also hard that, she didn't even know it was me majority of the time that I was there. So that was really, really hard. So, and then I just need a second, sorry. So what other question I thought that was really, 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 really valuable was talking about, what advice would you give to someone at the early stages of this journey, or, at least if they're further along. And quite a little bit of advice is, the first one I always want to say is that when you first learn about this, whether you're the person who's affected or the family member, it's just actually doing some research, and I use the phrase as empower yourself with knowledge. So you can be aware of, controlling your care, controlling and understanding the treatment, and so you can make educated decisions. And also, this is a common feedback that I get from my clients. I'm calling it the white coat syndrome. It sounds like I'm Western bashing today, but I'm just sort of just talking my opinion, my stories. But a lot of people get sort of caught under this haze of the white coat syndrome. If a doctor tells you X, you just believe it to be true. If a doctor says do this, you just believe it to be true. And that is not always the case, unfortunately. They are not God, so they don't always know what's best, and also don't necessarily always know what is the right thing to recommend you. And I had this really, really good example many, many years ago. I had a client with cancer, and he went to a doctor, and the doctor said, we're going to prescribe you. He was opting for the Western way, but he was also doing alternative treatments as well. So he was complementing them. And most people don't know that you don't have to go one or the other. You can also complement them together. But he said that the doctor was prescribing him chemotherapy, and we're just going to say with chemotherapy drug X. And because he's quite well off and he did his research, he got more informed, he found this test that could test how your body responds to different types of chemo and what the right kind of chemo would be for the type of cancer you have. And it turned out that the recommended, I'm going to say drug X of chemo from that doctor would have done nothing for him. And because he spent, I remember, I mean, this is a few years ago, but I think he said he spent £3,000 to £4,000 on this test. So it's not a cheap test. And basically discovered what the correct chemotherapy drug would have been for him. And if he just followed the doctor's advice, he wouldn't have been successful and who knows, would have passed on, right? So in a sense, it's like he did his research, he took matters into his own hands, and because of that, he became more empowered and he didn't just follow the advice of the doctor. And so he took matters into his own hands and, he created his survival. And that sort of extends me into my next biggest thing is always get a second opinion. There's been so many cases of people being misdiagnosed, told the wrong thing, told something completely different, and in this case, when you're doing something quite seriously, it's all about getting a second opinion. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that. I wasn't in the position to do that, but again, it's coming from the feedback that I've observed with clients that I've worked with. Also, since my mum's passing, one of my friends was like, you really should study this new modality that's becoming a lot more popular in the UK, but it's really, really big in the US, called a death doula. So you can understand a birth doula, midwife, etc. But a death doula is basically like a person that will basically be in your space to sort of be your best friend, to help get your affairs in order. They can help you whilst you're still with sound mind to make sort of, decisions, get your will, get your finances in order. How do you want to have your funeral? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? How do you want to sort out giving who what? So it's really just taking, I'm going to use the sort of broad term of admin out the way, and also having sort of a support person that can almost third party, not as emotionally attached, that can sort of help you and understand for you, and then also care for you whilst you're going through your final stages. Which equally, because most people don't always think about the family and what they're going through, because when a loved one passes on, it's very, very traumatic. You don't know how someone's going to react, and then they have to be left with all of these overwhelming decisions. And it's just really, really wonderful to know that, once the person passes, that is all you need to focus on, is just processing that emotional trauma. And then equally, it won't create fights between the family like, this should have been mine, they should have given me this, or I want them to be buried, no, I want them to be cremated. And it just takes all of that difficulty, potential upset away, and then everyone can just be, in a sense, their best selves, to help and be there and support and love each other. And that's really the most important thing that's there. Other advice I also talk about is being open-minded to alternative medicine practices. And the biggest thing I always talk about is that if I use Chinese medicine as an example, Chinese medicine is more than 5,000 years old. It's a really established medical system, that has been proven time and time again, that it can help, it can heal, it has its power. And of course, there's a lot of practitioners that specialize in cancer treatment and cancer care. You'll always hear the most common one. You'll even see it in movies, that people go for acupuncture during this time. That can be for, pain management, can be for relief, or even potentially healing the cancer. So I would always advise in this scenario, go to a senior skilled practitioner, but being open-minded to pursue alternative medicines, which, as I said earlier, can complement if you want to do the Western perspective, or alternatively, if you make the decision, to just go purely alternative. But, emphasizing Chinese medicine is 5,000 years old. On average, Western medicine is around 800. So there's, I would say, definitely in different capacity, Chinese medicine has a lot more advancement because just due to time and experience, they've been able to, do a lot more investigation and understanding of the body. Most important, regardless of your choice or a combination of which path you decide to choose, still an overhaul of the diet and lifestyle is absolutely essential. Removing inflammatory causing foods, triggers, sensitivities, including juicing, positivity around you, going outside, still doing some exercise while you can, etc. I think that's important. Where I always, advise as well is just to employ some sense of positivity, gratitude, laughter, happiness where you can, because this can have significantly healing and powerful benefits as well. And especially if you think of things, I'm going to use somebody famous here, but like Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's really taking over the world with his neuroscience and just sort of rewriting and reframing through meditation the power of healing. And he's got equipment I haven't personally done his work or gone on his retreats, but obviously you can speak to a lot of people about it. But, he's been able to measure the space of like how powerful the frequency raises when people go through the meditation, they reset the mind, and miracles happen. They really, really do. So I think, just trying to get people into that space will always help as well, to support, turning over quite literally a new leaf and potentially fighting this thing and surviving it as well. And I also know, because it was my first modality ever studied, not actually true. Reiki was actually, because I was gifted it in 2012, but reflexology was the official thing I studied, sort of making the journey into this side of town of this industry. And that's very powerful and relaxing for people as well. And as I always say, mindset is everything. So, I've personally seen and witnessed miracles. And so as I was just discussing with the Joe Dispenza as well, so that's quite helpful. Anyway, so that was a long-winded way to sort of talk about the article that I was going to bring up. So what I'm going to do now, I thought maybe it's good because, it's really important to understand me, my motivations, my backgrounds. Why do I do things? Why do I know things? What have I experienced? And I always think it's really helpful when someone's gone through something, because the biggest healing thing I've witnessed, because I've gone through a lot in my life, with time, you'll hear stories come out and you'll be like, wow, you've done that. Oh, you've gone through that. Oh, you don't know. It's being relatable to a person. So I find I can be quite diverse in helping people because I've gone through an experience. I understand what it feels like. I understand where they're at. Then I can understand how to sort of pull them out of that dark space as well. So I think that's quite helpful. Okay, now fast forward, or let's retract to the beginning of this podcast about talking, how can we empower wellness, how lifestyles and lifestyle changes can actually help prevent cancer. So when I wrote this article, I probably should just read it because I think it's quite good. No, not good as in like it's quite a good article. Oh God, that sounds like ego. No, I mean like it's quite good to probably read it so I don't actually paraphrase or maybe repeat myself, because I've got the document in front of me here, or the article in front of me here. So here is my reading voice now. So cancer is one of the leading health challenges of our time, affecting millions of people worldwide. While genetics and environmental factors play a role in cancer development, research shows that lifestyle choices significantly influence the risk of developing certain types of cancer. By making positive changes, you can empower your wellness and potentially reduce your cancer risk. And here are some evidence-based lifestyle strategies to consider. So I put 8 points. So number 1, adopt a nutrient-rich diet. The foods you consume can have a profound impact on your overall health and cancer risk. A diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins provides essential nutrients and antioxidants that can help protect cells from damage. Here are a few tips. Increase your plant-based foods. Incorporate a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables to benefit from their cancer-fighting phytochemicals. Limit processed and red meats, so processed foods and red meats. Studies suggest that high consumption of processed and red meats may increase the risk of colorectal cancer. So colon cancer, right? Because obviously it's a colon association article. And choose healthy fats. So opt for sources of healthy fruits. Opt for sources of healthy fats like nuts, seeds, avocados, and olive oil over saturated fats and trans fats. Point number 2. Maintain a healthy weight. Excess body weight is linked to an increased risk of several cancers, including breast, colorectal, and pancreatic cancers. And I'm just going to throw this in as well because of my work. I work with lymphatic drainage, and so exit points of where the lumps can go is in the groin and also in the armpits. And so what happens is a lot of women who develop breast cancer will have these lumps or nodules. And that's usually because of a lack of exercise or lack of movement, because the lymphatic system doesn't naturally move. You have to literally move it. So, quick tips is like getting a power plate at home, which you'll probably see in one of my videos somewhere posted, / YouTube, getting a rebounder, literally exercising a few times a week, hot bath, something hot stimulating, even sauna, steam potentially as well, but that will then help prevent that. So including breast, colorectal, and pancreatic cancers. Regular physical activity and mindful eating are key components of weight management. So recommended is to aim to engage in at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise or activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week. Incorporate strength training exercises to build muscle and boost metabolism. It also keeps your bones strong as well. Especially as women, we can lose our calcium within our bones as we age because of the hormonal changes and menopause that come on. So never just do cardio, please. Cardio is for losing weight and moving fluids. Then we want strength-based training, muscle retention, and bone retention as well, and boosting metabolism, right? And then practice portion control and avoid sugary drinks and snacks, which can be quite hard because often people are tired and they're craving energy, and usually your body goes, quick way to get energy is eating processed foods, snacky bits, and high energy drinks. So you just want to sort of just be mindful of that. Stay physically active. Physical activity not only helps with weight management, but it also reduces inflammation, improves the immune function. Regular exercise has been shown to lower the risk of cancers such as breast, colon, and endometrial cancer. For activities you enjoy, such as walking, swimming, dancing, cycling, make exercise a sustainable part of your routine. So whatever way that form can express itself for you, that you can find somewhat fun and enjoyable, do that. I also think I want to mention this before it slips my mind, but when I studied colonic hydrotherapy, aka gut health cleaning, I was fascinated to hear the story that someone had cancer, and I still stay to this day, I don't remember, or I didn't hear properly which cancer he had, but I'm assuming colon cancer. He ended up, he was a practitioner as well, or I assume that part as well, because maybe financially, but he did a colonic hydrotherapy session every day for 365 days of the year and ended up healing his cancer. So there's really big powers in doing gut health cleaning or gut health reset, which is powerful, considering that 70% of your immune system is in your gut, 95% of your hormones are made in your gut, and everything starts in the gut, really. As Hippocrates says, all disease begins in the gut. So, if you start addressing that, that's usually, in my opinion, the root cause of all things. Right. So don't be afraid also to add that as point 9. Right. Number 4, avoid tobacco products. So tobacco use is the leading preventable cause of cancer worldwide. Blows my mind if you get a cigarette. My mom was a smoker when she was younger, right? So I was exposed to it. But it was hilarious to see what the boxes look like now, where you see the graphic, scary photos like, this can kill you, look what it can cause. And people are like, yeah, no problem. And now obviously the whole fad with the vaping, and which has now been proven that science is showing now it's actually much worse than smoking itself. So there's a lot of articles being written back about, how the trend is that everyone's going back to cigarette smoking. I saw some Instagram video or TikTok video, I can't remember now, but basically one carton of one vape, if you will. I don't know the words these days with the young generation, but one vape was equivalent to like 13 cigarettes. And you think like, oh, you just puff, puff, puff. And I personally don't like it, because when I'm walking the streets of London, it's just kind of like going from cloud to cloud of like different flavoured strawberry or watermelon or bubblegum. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I hope they can sort of make that not as freely accessible, and especially to the kids as well. So just important to avoid that. Smoking and using tobacco products are linked to lung cancer and various other cancers, including mouth, throat, bladder, and pancreas. Quitting tobacco can significantly reduce your cancer risk, regardless of how long you've been using it. Seek support from healthcare providers, support groups, or smoking cessation programs to help you quit. And there's a couple of obviously good books as well. I forget the name, but it's the hilarious book where it says how to quit smoking, but don't quit while you read this book. And I sort of joke about, because you probably get a lot of bad reviews. You're going like, you said I could quit and I'm struggling and I'm angry. I just remember when my mom said she tried everything to quit smoking, and she eventually made success with going to hypnotherapist. But I think deep down she decided like, this is the time now. And she said her withdrawal symptoms were horrific. Where I remember one of the expressions she said was, it was like someone taking a hairdryer and putting it on certain parts of her body, and it was burning. She was coughing up like black tar. She turned yellow for a bit. But the biggest thing she said is that substitute for your hand is because your hand's always occupied with a cigarette in it. So I remember she used to get like a fake, cigarette just to hold. And she said, unfortunately, the next substitute was food. So then I think she gained about 10 kilograms as well. But, my mum was beautiful regardless. She was beautiful regardless. So very, very just aware to know as well. Just sort of find something to occupy your hands, maybe knit or something, crochet, whatever you can get your hands on, or maybe just phones these days, because that's an extension of the hand. So yes. Next one, which is the biggest problem that is local and around, especially in the UK, because of the accessibility. So the first thing I remember that shocked me when I moved to this country is that you can just buy booze anywhere, like literally anywhere, like from the shops. Whereas in South Africa, all you could buy is from bottle stores, and they would be closed on Sundays. So there was a limitation and limit of access to alcohol. But here it's just willy-nilly. You can buy it anywhere, anytime, any day. So it's, quite a big thing. Drinking culture, right? So of course, in this case, or emphasis here, limiting alcohol consumption is quite a big deal. Because it's been associated with an increase of cancer, being mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, breast. So if you choose to drink, do so in moderation. The general guideline is up to 1 drink per day for women and 2 for men, but preferentially as little to no alcohol as possible. I don't drink. I drank when I was younger and silly and exploring, teenage years. But for many years, I haven't drank. Every now and then I would have had a drink, but now I'm in a relationship with my partner who's a martial artist, so very strict sports professional. So he's absolute no on alcohol, and also has never smoked, never put anything to his mouth. So it just helps when you have, like-minded community around you that supports the cause, which is really helpful. So, again, trying to encourage sobriety around you, and all of these new up-and-coming sober parties. There's all of these botanical substitute alcoholic drinks that sort of have the botanics that can give you the uplift, the change, give you that, enhanced demeanor that you enjoy, that you get from alcohol. Still social, still tasty, still delicious. But of course not having the impact that it does have on the gut, on your mind, because it's like sanitation. It just destroys your microbiome, and it's almost like a reset. But as I always say, thank God the gut is forgiving, because within the 24 hours your gut is rebuilding. But you don't want to keep damaging, because as you get older it gets harder to sort of step up and reclaim and refight. Right. So for me, if you can try stop drinking, that would be great. But of course, I respect that different generations, 1 to 2 generations above, and starting from mine as well, we are raised in the culture of drinking. So I sort of say, if you're going to drink, try and not have all the sugary beverages and mixers with it. So lemon water, lemon soda. And if you are going to drink, my preference is always a red wine, because it does have a lot of health benefits. But, one glass is beneficial, but one bottle, we're talking a different game. So if you kind of are going to go, if you're going to make those choices, those are the things I say. And on the rocks would be better, but just conscious about how many you have. And just, again, the other aspect is limiting the sugar intake, because you can have one brandy and coke, then it's 10 brandy and cokes, and you're just thinking about that blood sugar mess up over excess consumption, puts your body put your body into an acidic state, not an alkaline state. And then those are sort of the problems you have. There's the hidden other agendas that come with making a decision that you just can easily avoid if you make just different conscious decisions. And the last one I always say is 1 for 1. 1 glass of alcohol, you got to have a glass of water, not tap water, bottled water, because you want good quality water as well. Okay, alcohol is expensive. I know when you go out here, it can be a fortune, but don't cheap out on, like spending £1 or £2 on a bottle of water, because that you should reframe as an investment in your health, right? Okay, cool. Number 6, protect your skin. So skin cancer, of course, is one of the most preventable forms of cancer. It's also one of the most common ones at the moment. So we say, protect your skin by using sun cream, a minimum SPF of 30. I say usually when you're going out, sort of big days, in the sun, on the beaches, that kind of thing. And also note that you don't want to use the generic stuff that you get in the shops or Boots or wherever you're going and getting them from, because they contain a lot of chemicals and formulation that actually do in itself, on its own, cause cancer. So you kind of want to get a zinc, clean sunscreen that is non-toxic, healthy, beneficial and friendly, and skin friendly as well, but does the same job. So just be mindful of that. So you don't want the generic stuff. I've always put the generic stuff on since a kid, and I've always broken out. I've had negative side effects from it, so I've stayed away from it. And now I know why, because my body always knew, right? So you can wear protective clothing and hats when you go outdoors as well, so you can just create extra shade. And the big thing that is also very popular here is I ask people to avoid tanning beds, because they are not good. And, whenever it is peak hours, whenever you are out doing something, maybe try avoid peak times, maybe go for lunch around then, or try do something different indoors or a museum, etc. So you don't go out during the peak, and then you can just avoid that risk in a sense where you can. And also just a couple of things new is also about this constant fake tan product as well. Not very good for your skin, but there are natural versions. And if you want to know the ones that I use, if you want to know the brand that I use, I don't use many brands, I use a brand, really good. I absolutely love them. So what they do, what I love is the way I frame it is basically they're a company that have been able, as I understand it, taken really, really famous products that do well on the market, that have high, support and recognition. And I just frame it as they've reverse engineered, understood the product, but I've learned how to recreate it with using natural products, botanicals that are very enriching, very nourishing, very healthy. So it's suitable for all skin types as well. So you can get the best of both, that you can still achieve, an aesthetic look if you want, but without causing any long-term damage to your health, right? Number 7, get regular screening. So, more so than not, when I have people say to me, I have cancer, then they'll go, but it is genetic, it is in my family, mum's had it, grandma's had it. And it's kind of like, okay, well, if you are one of those people that there's some genetic predisposition, you need to be, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, that seems like a million years ago, on top of your pillars more so than anyone else. And that would come down to getting regular screenings. It's all about prevention medicine in my books, where it's kind of like, just get a checkup, make sure everything's okay, don't miss your appointments, don't not take them seriously, and just get things checked. Because I remember from when I studied, or I was doing research, on colon cancer, they said that the average age of diagnosis of the condition is anything between 65 to 75. So, these things can be sort of just on, dormant on the back burner until they sort of go, hey, I'm here. So you just want to just keep going, checking maintenance for the vehicle, and then ensuring that nothing then can come into fruition. Because I think that's the biggest thing that I notice is people just don't take their health seriously in terms of maintenance. They only end up doing something once something's happened. So aka I use the analogy, the car's broken down, but if you were maintaining the car every year, the car by default couldn't break down, right? So that's what we want to get people's minds, I want to get people's mindsets into achieving. So early detection of cancer through screenings can save lives, because if you get diagnosed, stage 1 or, some suspicious mole or, some suspicious lump, get a biopsy, you can check it out, then you can rule it out, but you just don't want to get there. So screenings such as mammograms, colonoscopies, skin checks, to help identify cancer at an early stage when it's most treatable. And then you can discuss your risk factors with your doctor to determine, or alternative medicine practitioner, or both, to determine which screenings are appropriate for you. Right. And number 8 is prioritizing your mental and emotional well-being. So chronic stress. So stress actually can make things worse, right? If you're stressed, your body shuts down, doesn't work, and then it can't do its reset and repair, right? Rest and repair. So chronic stress and poor mental health can negatively affect your immune system and overall well-being. So practice stress management techniques such as mindfulness, meditations, if you're religious, prayer, yoga, deep breathing, journaling. I'm adding extra things on, gratitude, journaling, being around people, like I said, the happiness points, where can you get your happiness points from? And as I was sort of emphasizing earlier in this podcast about building strong social connections and seeking professional help as well, I'm really a big fan about therapy, and therapy of all kinds, talk therapy, physical therapy, trauma therapy, cellular trauma therapy, any type of therapy there is, do really approach it with an open mind. There's a lot of stigma around it, but I think if a lot more people were openly saying that they want to go to therapy, then going to therapy and doing the therapy and getting results from the therapy, the world would be a much different place. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. And I know that one that's really, really easy and accessible, especially now since COVID, the transition to a lot more services online, so that can be done a lot more practically, is BetterHelp. So here's my free promotion for BetterHelp. Really wonderful and also accessible for people that need concessions or cannot afford it. They do make different options for people to make it as well as accessible. So that's really, really nice and kind of them. So, making the world slowly a better place. So professional help when needed, and which is, of course, fundamentally crucial for emotional health. So my final thoughts are, preventing cancer is not about guaranteeing a life free from disease, but about empowering yourself to reduce the risks. By making informed lifestyle changes and taking proactive steps, you can create a healthier future for yourself and your loved ones. Remember, it's never too late to start making positive changes. Every small step counts. And as I said, I'm huge on daily little habits, making consistent practice. Empower your wellness journey today and inspire others to do the same. Because once you do, you inspire those around you, and then you start to create this wonderful knock-on effect of positive changes in you, your family, your friends, your co-workers, your siblings, your children, etc. And as always, in the spirit of Ubuntu and community, our superpower, together we can build a community focused on health, prevention, and resilience. Thank you. Right, so I know this is a long podcast. I hope you enjoy my voice. I'm sending you lots of love wherever you are in the world. If you want to share some stories with me, or, everyone fundamentally is true, as my friend said, everyone has a story. So I shared a really big, intimate one of mine today with you, or maybe a couple actually, but this is just my sort of stance. I'm very passionate about cancer. I'm very passionate about helping people in general. But there's huge motivations that lie behind my, reasons on the subject. And so I, a little bit belated, but just obviously a belated Happy World Cancer Day, if you will. And just trying to say that we fight this together. We're stronger together. Almost like from Planets of the Apes. Apes are stronger together, So, we just want to empower wellness here. So we want to empower you, empower your mind, empower your information, empower the decision-making tools so you can take that control and not leave that to other people. All right. So looking forward to you guys next week with some more juicy, maybe I'm definitely going to get onto something gut health. I don't know. There's lots of subjects. So I'm going to decide in the moment what feels right to sort of speak about next week. And I see you there. Same time, same place. Have a nice weekend and rest of your week wherever you are in the world. Sending you lots of love. This is Freudenberg on Can't Make This Shit Up. Bye.